All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to go live here in a second on Revolution Radio. I'm sitting in with a couple of guys. Never really sat in with them before, so we'll see how it goes. Not real sure what we're going to get into, but I'm sure whatever it is, it'll be interesting. It will be interesting. I'm over here trying to scroll. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm scrolling for articles. Give me a second. I know. Oh my god. I gotta see this. All right, sorry about that. I was zoning out. Well, here, let me see a second. Video outputs loads because I got no lighting. I got no lighting is why. But I can't turn a light on in here. It's daytime. So anyhow, let me here show you what I have here. This is the article that I just dropped in there for them. You guys can check that out. All right, looks like we're going to be going live here any second.
Good afternoon, folks. How is everyone? This is BORK filling in for Deacon John. Today is October 18th. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to struggle through this. I'm not good with what Deacon John usually does, but we're going to try. I got a good friend from the station on. I don't know him that well, but all of us are friends at the station. Also might have Brew come on in a few minutes into the hour, and we'll be talking about current event type things and a little bit of this and that. Jimmy thought we could get into the constitutional issues a little bit because why not? Why not? Because we need to all know about that. Anyway, Jimmy, you there?
I am here, sir. How are you doing, LB?
No, I'm okay. You know,
Great.
like I said, going to struggle through this. I'm
Oh, that's not.
usually.
Yeah, it's not a struggle. Believe me. I mean, there is so much. There is so much going on in this crazy, insaniac world that we're living in. I don't think there's anything. I mean, the news keeps coming so hard and so fast these days. It's hard to even get a grasp on the day to day. You latch onto one single thing that may be going on today, and all of a sudden tomorrow it's 180 degrees out of what it was today. It's unreal.
Right. Yeah, right. Anyway, I was thinking maybe we should introduce ourselves because Deacon's been on here, I think, since the station started, and people might not know about you or myself. So why don't you go first?
All right. Well, I joined the station probably about a month and a half ago or so, and my show's on at 11 Pacific, 2 a.m. Eastern on Friday night. And previously, I was on a different network for about 3.5 years. So I've been basically doing research work since the early 2000s, right after 9/11 happened. 2001, 2002, I started to sort of get into some of the information. And, before I got into doing radio, I was interested in the information. So I spent quite, a lot of hours going over stuff and listening to lectures and, just, doing what most people do. I mean, the alternative media seems to have this conveyor belt, LB. It's sort of, you start on one end where you get yelled at by Alex Jones in the morning at 9. And then after you learn enough, you start to venture out on your own and start to find different subject matters that might be interesting. And I know that you're very interested in the past and what might have happened here in the United States of America. And John, there's something wrong in America today, isn't there?
Yes, there is. It's terrible.
I mean, this is not the world. I'm in my early 50s, and this is not the world that I lived in when I was a young man. And honestly, I feel kind of bad for the young people that are coming up nowadays. They don't have the freedoms that we had just 30, 40 years ago. The freedoms that we had seem to be non-existent, and the Constitution seems to be a rag. As far as some of these people, didn't Barack Obama call it a rag? I don't know who it was that called it a rag, but somebody did.
Yeah, he might have, but a lot of people have just destroyed it. But basically, my book, The Red Amendment, covers that, how they usurped the Constitution and put a new system of law in. And most people don't understand that it's communist, but they did it, gradually. Or progressively is the word they use. To get it put in place so no one knew about it. And, people being born in that box, they really don't know what's transpired. You said, the last 40 years has been bad. I'm about 10 years older than you, so I've seen better times than you have even.
Right.
But they've really accelerated the last 30 years, I would say. 20 for sure. Like you said, you started to research. I started back in mid-90s, and that's why I wrote my book, because people were getting in trouble because they thought they had constitutional rights. Basically, the difference between the two due processes of the Constitution is the due process of the Constitution before the 14th Amendment was the government was limited in what they could do to the people of the states. Afterwards, it's a total agency system where they created all these, agencies, as exist. And that due process is totally different from the constitutional, original, Constitution due process.
Let me ask a couple of questions, because I know the audience might not know, and I think these questions are important ones, because I know a lot of people throw stuff around. And whether or not that's actually true or not, I don't know. But I think now that you're here, I might be able to ask you some questions that you might be able to help dispel some of the rumors that fly around. So now there's talk that there was at one time a United States of America, and then
Right.
that was then turned into a corporation, and that the 13th Amendment freeing the slaves or whatever technically just made everybody slaves. Now that's one thing that's rolling around. What do you got to say about that?
Well, the United States was always a corporation. So that's kind of a distraction or a misinformation,
Right.
if not disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've seen in the last 10 years that, they've commandeered the movement and destroyed it to get people back into the political system. I discovered it was a crime to vote per Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. They had to get people to rebel against the original system to create their new political system. So, I could spend hours on this. Of course, it's all in my book, and papers I've written.
Well, where can people get your book, LB?
I'll just look up the Red Amendment on Google search. You should be able to find it, or any search engine. I use Google because it's most popular, but I hate the thing. Those people have destroyed the internet.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've turned the internet into something, and they've created a censorship module that is unlike anything unprecedented in the history of mankind, because they are now in charge of what you see when you type in a search term, and we all take for granted that what we're getting back is an honest result. But these are not honest dealers in the Silicon Valley, and they have the ability to censor any way that they want to. As a matter of fact, if I'm Jeff Bezos and I have a company called Amazon, and I don't want to sell your book on there because I don't need the money for your book. Your book's talking about stuff I don't want to have on my Amazon. So I just won't sell your book. So if I don't sell your book, and you can't find your book on a search, your book does not exist. And that, my friend, is some serious business moving into the future, because Google is literally in charge of the information and what we see.
Right.
Including the
they own YouTube down. They're censoring everyone there. They threw out that carrot or bone to dangle in front of everyone, got him in there free, to broadcast. Now they gave him a chance to make some money, but they're taking that all away now. And now they're bombarding the YouTube videos with, advertisements. It's very annoying. Of course, they let you subscribe to it and get rid of the ads, but it's just a profit deal like anything else, or it's turned into that.
I have a YouTube channel. I've been on YouTube for quite a long time, but I never promoted my channel as far as my radio show was concerned, because I use certain material on my radio show. And what I do is I play that material on YouTube first to see if I get any problems, and then I eliminate that material and make adjustments so that I can do a radio show that won't have any issues. And so I haven't really been using it, like I said, to promote my show. So my channels have never been monetized. So I've lost 3 channels broadcasting live shows on the internet. I've lost those channels for absolutely no reason. I had no copyright strikes, no community guideline violations, no anything, and for no reason. So this is right when I started to promote my channel for my show. And I got up to about 154 subscribers. I was there for about a week or two, and then I got shut down. So then I opened up another channel. And now I'm doing the same thing. I've done the same thing consistently since I've been on YouTube. I do video and news pieces. I use music. I use clips. I play comedy. I play movie clips. I do all kinds of stuff on there, and I've been doing the same thing since day one. And my first channel is still there. All the videos are still there. They've never taken any of the videos down, and all the material that I use is already on YouTube. So in other words, how do I get nailed for using material that some other guy already uploaded that he didn't own either? In other words, it's up there. It's got 1 million views. So,
It seems like there's no rhyme or reason to
well, I'll
what they
tell.
do. I get lost two Facebook accounts. Didn't get any explanation why. I could guess why because I was telling the truth.
Right.
And then five or four Twitter accounts for People's Awareness Coalition. That's the uh, I don't like to call it an organization, but it's the group that I started for making people aware back in 2000. I hit the net the same time Alex Jones did, and not too many people know about us because I didn't have $1 million, angel donors like he did,
Yeah. Well.
spreading half wrong information.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, we can get into that if you want to, but let's just say this: hey, when the money bombs come in, there's an amount of money there. When you get that phone call and the guy says, "Hey, did you get a donation for X amount of dollars to the penny?" I'm that guy, and here's what I want you to do, boy, and you better get hopping.
Right, right.
Because that's the way that rolls. Hey,
Yeah,
my name's Jimmy, and this is LB, and you're listening to Revolution Radio. We are fully self-supported through listeners' contributions. The hosts, the producers, and everybody here involved at the station, we do our part. We're completely unpaid. We volunteer because we want to bring great information to you listeners. So if you have anything extra that you could spare, we could really use it. Go to freedomslips.com. Drop in over there. There's a few ways you can donate. If you don't have any money, good vibes are always great. Prayers are always excellent. You could share the station with people, and maybe the new person that comes by, maybe they got a few extra bucks. You never know. We could really appreciate it if you would help us out, and because we're doing our part. I mean, I can see the sweat on LB's brow from over here, and because he's been in here, he's been slugging it out. He's been researching. There's a big difference between being a researcher and being somebody who types something into Google. Now, a researcher, they go down to the library, right? So, LB, if there was a Joe McCarthy, okay, and there was a John Birch Society, and there was a Joe McCarthy. Now, Joe McCarthy was made out to be a crazy lunatic who was on some bender trying to find these invisible communists that were around every corner. And didn't they sort of superimpose the word communist to mean Jew? I mean, wasn't the big thing, the fact of the matter was that Joe McCarthy was rooting out these communists, but the communists also were involved with these Bolsheviks. And so the communists in general, not including the Jews, but just everybody else who's a communist, atheistic communists. And then there was these Bolsheviks. And so what happened was there was all these people, there was all these crypto individuals who changed their names as to not appear to be a certain type of person because they were afraid to be persecuted under the communist label. What was going on with Joe McCarthy? Was he crazy, or there really was communism coming in, like he said, wasn't there?
Oh, sure there was. I believe he was a useful idiot. He was Jesuit trained. He went to a Jesuit school, and he's conferencing with the Jesuit types when he was going through that the hearings in Congress, and I think what that all was a dog and pony show to dispel America being communized. They were pointing fingers in other directions. What was his thing to make him look like a kook and make Americans believe that there was no communism here in America,
Right.
when it was being secretly implemented.
Exactamundo.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a dude by the name of Yuri Brezhnev?
Yes, he did a couple of interviews with G. Edward Griffin, I believe, a few years back.
Yeah, I mean, that information is something that I think the younger people really need to take a listen to, because I don't really believe. Hey, Johnson in the chat room says communists, Bolsheviks, and Jews are all the same thing. Well, kind of.
Pretty much.
It's well, well. The thing is you got to take the religion out of it for a second. call it communism and have that flag, because there's a lot of atheistic communists. There's a lot of people that are not religious in any shape or form. But that doesn't mean that people under certain religious flags cannot fall under a political viewpoint such as communism or conservatism or liberalism, as it were. So, but Joe McCarthy wasn't crazy. What about the John Birch Society? How do you feel about them?
I think it started off in honesty, but I think it was commandeered, and they still have a lot of good information. I just watched something a few days ago that was pretty good. It was based on what I believe. You know, communism was actually started in the United States. And I forget the gentleman's name, but it was a very good video someone posted. I think Ahmad posted it.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, the Jewish thing, there's no doubt in my mind that they concocted it. Karl Marx was a Jew. Anytime you hear the word communism, it's basically goes back to the Communist Manifesto. You know, just like socialism, they have a bunch of words for it, but socialism's just totalitarian rule. You know, the will of the legislature or the government. You know, people can't live in peace in their own will. You know, the legislature controls everything, and that's what we've had since the Civil War. The legislatures of the states and the federal government are controlling everything.
Well, so Johnson also in the chat brought up that communism is a Jewish invention. So
yes.
All right. So let me just. I'm curious to know if this seems to be the common idea about the communism. Is that what makes communism bad? The fact that a Jewish person came up with it? I'm just curious. Jewish persons came up with it, but does that in and of itself make it bad, or is it bad all around in general? Because who invented it in the beginning and their religion, does that have something to do with this plan for the goyim to be, subverted into some, dystopic boot on the neck of society, blah, blah, blah. I don't really get the point of the I understand it, because I know there's a lot of people that find that to be a really interesting point, because it seems to show up consistently in a lot of areas. And so it makes this finger pointing under a flag or a rag doll to shake as the enemy. But honestly, isn't communist the enemy of all of us? I mean, really, I don't. When we see a computer or we see technology, do we have to? We know that the all-seeing eye or the AI is bad, right? Everybody thinks the AI is bad, right? So who invented the AI? And if it was a Jewish guy, does that make AI any worse? Or, does it make it worse because a Jewish guy invented it, or is it just bad because people don't like it, or it's not good for people? I don't get it.
It's basically a simple answer. I've said before that communism could be good, but it's what they did with it is the bad thing. And I think, in my opinion, from what I've seen, is Karl Marx was a front man, just like George Soros, I believe, is today, for the Klan, if we can call him that. And their intent was, the first time I read the Communist Manifesto, I go, this is basically a plot to control the world.
LB's got a phone call coming in.
Yeah, I just had to get
the hotline.
I should disconnect the thing when I do shows. Anyway, the Communist Manifesto is a plot to rule the world. And let me tell you what I saw. did two main things. It was creating a job, or not a job, just a second.
Somebody's calling in. The conversation about the Jews has gotten out of control.
Yeah.
No, I'm teasing.
Getting bad phone calls.
I'm teasing.
No, but it was made to create a workforce out of all people of the world, and also it was destroying the middle class. That was obvious, okay, because Marx said the ruling class, the upper echelon of people were okay, which doesn't make any sense because they owned all the property. They were rich for a reason, you know, and Marx was going after the middle class. And what do we have today? The middle class is being destroyed.
It's been destroyed, if you ask me. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
Well, they're going for more of it. You know, they've taken the velvet glove off the iron fist the last 20 years.
Well, so there's a big distinction. There's a big distinction between people who follow Hebrew ideals and Zionism. So there's a distinction.
Yes.
There's a big distinction there, but because I want to say, you know, here's the thing. It's just like every Mason that you meet isn't, you know, planning, you know, rubbing their hands together and dreaming of the day when they're going to do whatever they're going to do. They're just regular old guys like everybody, and, you know, there's upper echelons in the Masons, and, you know, and those groups are you know, but that doesn't.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point I wanted to circle back around to what you said, that communism isn't necessarily that bad. And you know what? That's a really important point, because it had the idea, not necessarily of what Marx was talking about, because when we think about communism, immediately we think of the Communist Manifesto. We think about its writers. Obviously, the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto have been fulfilled, right? There's no.
Yeah, they're all applied in America.
Right, so there's no question about that. But here's the big distinction that I think needs to be made, at least in 2019, because on some level, moving into the future with the advent of the technology that's coming in, there's going to be a severe human capital, and the value of human capital is going to go down. And your ability to get yourself some crappy job that you can afford to, you know, buy the stuff you need is going to go away. And at some point, there's going to be a big glut in the in the workforce with a bunch of people with no money. So I mean, at the point it's sort of like musical chairs in a way, because as people have less and less money, the need for more and more products diminishes. And so at some point, without money, there's no need for capitalism. Right? There's no need, because there is no competition at some point. All the companies making jeans, you know, go out of business one by one until there's nothing left but the one company that makes those gray pants and shirts that everybody wants. When you get in their $1,500 a month stipend, I mean, to live in your 3-foot PVC tubes stacked on top of each other down the street at the Smart City, because that's that's where we're going.
Yeah, let me read something in that regard. I want to get back into what I said about communism being good. I don't want that being misconstrued by anyone, because I believe it was a total plot to enrich the rich, or, you know, take everything out of the control of, you know, each country's hands and put it in the control of, you know, the elite. For example, you saw what the president or CEO of Nestle said about water, right?
No.
That peoples of the countries don't have the rights to water. It should be theirs.
It should be Nestle's?
Yes. Or corporations, whatever. But
well,
that's just one case of world communism, as I call it. Well, they call it that. I don't. They named it that. In action, or what it's supposed to be doing. And let me read what Karl Marx said about capitalism. He said this when he, about the same time, or after he wrote the Communist Manifesto, he also wrote Das Kapital, which was about capitalism. He said, capitalist production, therefore, develops technology and the combining together of various processes into a social whole only by sapping the original sources of all wealth, the soil, and the labor. So he knew what capitalism would do, and he was setting up the blueprint of communism. That's all the Communist Manifesto is a blueprint for capitalism.
It's a blueprint for global enslavement.
That's right.
But yeah, so I mean, obviously, the world is in a mode that's changing, and we can see across the world there's protests going on over in France. Those are still going on. We don't see anything about it in the news whatsoever. People are definitely tired of the system that exists. People are.
Oh yeah, definitely. But the problem is they don't know what it is.
Well, we have 2 or 3 generations of people that have come through the schools that have absolutely no idea what happened. Listen, I got this clip here from Yuri Bezmenov. Let's listen to a few minutes of this clip. It's 29 minutes after, so we still got a good chunk of time left here. And this is the Yuri Bezmenov interview with G. Edward Griffin. My name's Jimmy.
Yeah. I brought Brew in too. He's going to listen up and comment too.
Great. And my name's Jimmy, and BORK is here with me, and he's the author. What's the title of your book again?
The Red Amendment.
The Red Amendment.
RedAmendment.net.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's where you can find it. Now here comes Yuri Bezmenov. Take a listen to this.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of...
There we go for a second. That's Yuri Bezmenov. What do you guys think about that? I mean, this is a great interview. I'll drop this in the chat for everybody. You guys still there?
Hey, Brew, you there? You want to comment first, or?
Yeah. No, I'll let you go, Albie.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I knew about the rules. I made a few memes of them and put them up on Facebook when I was on there. But yeah, what he's laying down is how the communist mind conquers a country. So he's on, I guess, the first part of it, and you'll see that the last part is normalization. I think it is where they get people's minds and just control them to the way they want them to think, or they want the people to think. So anyway, do you want to continue on that?
Sure. Yeah, it's giving me I'm having some issues right now, but I'm just waiting for it to come back. But in the meantime, normalization. It was funny because in this video he goes, when the tanks rolled into Poland, they said, now the situation is normalized. So this is Revolution Radio, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to get I'm trying to get him back here. You know what it is though? I got Google. I'm running some Google, and it's jamming up my my memory, and that's why this isn't playing. So just give us a second.
At least 3 generations of American students, without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black. You still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place, and
yes,
who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Popular like Daniel Ellsberg, and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay Daniel them nothing. Ellsberg and beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be the greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless Even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about...
All right, I'm going to hold it up right there. Before we get into that part, I mean, we can see that this has clearly already been completed. He said then, and this interview is from the 80s, he said then it had been completed for 25 years. So at this point, I mean, do children growing up in America today even have a concept of what happened over in World War II at all?
I don't think so. And going back to what he's saying, what he's talking about is the coming totalitarianism, which is the velvet glove coming off the iron fist. All the planks of the Communist Manifesto were gradually or progressively applied over, the last 120, 30 years or so. So they started in the 1850s, actually, with the 48ers, as I've talked about with several people on my show before. So it was a slow and gradual thing that they've done. But like I said, they're going to drop the hammer here unless something stopped. And, back to the demoralization, Hugh Hefner and his Playboy magazine was the start of it. Not that there was some other things going on. Talking about the tribe. Then you had, Hustler magazine by, what's his name?
Larry Flint.
Larry Flint, thank you. Yeah. So that had been going on a long time, like he said. So anyway, you have anything to add, Brew?
Well, if you want to put this into context, okay, well, what happened in the 80s, Carter starts the Department of Education, Reagan carries it on, Common Core comes into place, and that's basically we have the essential engine for the indoctrination system. Of course, they're changing history books. They're not teaching anything about the Constitution. They're not teaching anything about the true, as close as they can get to, the real reasons for World War I, World War II, and what really happened. And then, let's bring it up to modern times. Talk about demoralization. What do they say? What's going on today? White man bad. White man masculinity bad. White Christian bad. Christians in general bad. Demoralizing everybody left and right. Yes. They even got to, if you're a white nationalist, you're a terrorist group.
Yeah,
and
if you got,
and you're a nationalist, now you're a terrorist group.
Yeah, and if there's, are you guys white?
I am. I'm German.
Okay, well, I'm white.
Not to be confused with Hitler.
Okay, well, so there's two of us here. This must be a Klan meeting. There's two white people grouping up. This must be a Klan meeting. No, I mean, realistically, let's look at the demographic proportions of the United States of America. You make white people bad. The white people are in the majority, unfortunately. Okay, people of color are not, accurately represented on TV. Okay, there aren't all these successful things going on TV. That's not what it really looks like in the world. Really, if you put a room full, I think the demographic on black folks in America is something like 13 or 14% overall. I'm not saying now. Listen, if you want to start getting into the spectrum or the rainbow of colors, and then you start adding those colors together, then at that point, the white people become around a 50% situation. So it's 50% white people, 50% people of color. So now what are they doing? So they're setting up a 50-50 fight like we have everywhere, right? When there's an election, what is it? It's like 48 to 51, or it always just barely squeaked by. I mean, it's not that way, because the thing about it is they got us divided to the point of it's literally they've gone so far now. It's not bad enough to divide us by color and by religion. Okay, now they're even taking a subgroup, people that are of homosexual tendencies, and now they divide those up into separate groups, and they have all people that happen to be gay are fighting against each other for these different rights for these different groups. I mean, and then you look at the alternative media, same thing. You got this guy over here, he likes flat earth, this guy doesn't. They're fighting, everybody's fighting against each other, and that's
exactly
right, and that's the whole way that this is going to happen. That's the way
divide and conquer.
Right, that's the way this is going to happen, because the more they hammer how bad it is, the more they hammer. Look at these old white guys, man. Look at these old white guys running everything, and look at you know, just what? My family never owned slaves. I'm Irish. You know what? We were treated worse than black people. Black people could sit at the back of the bus and he could eat in the certain place in the restaurant. Irish people had to sit outside. You weren't even allowed to come in. We were outside like dogs. Okay, Chinese people. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's got their thing, but I don't blame anybody. It's not. Listen, I'm responsible for me. You know, I don't look for a savior outside of myself. I try to do what I can do. Listen, both teams pray at a football game, don't they? One team wins, the other team doesn't. The big difference is if you sit back and pray and wait for a result, or you can sit back and pray and do the legwork, and the legwork always wins, because faith without work is dead. And America is in serious trouble. If we don't stop dividing and subdividing and getting back to what we see here, which is people are at work to demoralize and undermine this country in a way that has never been seen before. I've never seen anything like what's going on here. Listen, people sat around for 8 years while Obama was in there. They didn't like him. But they didn't tear him down every single day on every single thing that, you know, as soon as he opened his eyeballs, anything that he did from that point forward is wrong. Listen, I don't agree with Trump on 100%, but he is the president, is he not? So whether I agree with him or I don't, the bottom line is we're all Americans, man. We're all Americans, and these young people today, unfortunately, you guys, they're listening to different people. They're listening to different leaders. They're not listening to Yuri Brezmenov. Here he comes.
Your ideas and the patterns of your consumption, whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis.
Okay, that's a good place to stop. I'm sorry, brother. I did not mean to cut you off. Please jump back in there on that destabilization.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think
I'm sorry. I
I
cut that other host off. He was saying something, and I jumped in there and I cut him off, and I didn't mean to cut him off in the middle. He was yeah.
Brew. Yeah.
Yeah, Brew.
You want to?
No, I'll go by guest. And
I'm sorry, Brew. I didn't know your name. My name's Jimmy.
hey, Jimmy, my TF friend. So, anywho, what's destabilization? What we need to do is name some names. Who's the destabilizers here? AOC, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. These are the destabilizers.
Yes.
Yes. Good
all
list.
Names.
Well,
I mean, the list goes on. I mean,
well,
literally.
here's
Right.
here's what's coming. So this is what I see. I mean, let me jump in with you on that. I think this impeachment thing, the impeachment thing that's been going on, this was specifically started by the Clinton clan. They had no intention of going for impeachment, but what they wanted to do is bring up the subject of Ukraine so that Joe Biden's son and Joe Biden's activities could get brought on the table so they could eliminate Joe Biden so that she can come in. She's coming in, man. Mark my words. And listen, what she's going to do is they've already looked at the demographic across the United States with these young people, and they're all gravitating towards Bernie Sanders for one reason, because Bernie Sanders is talking socialism. I mean, the word democratic socialism all of a sudden has become like the word deep state. Everybody's saying it, right? So is it all of a sudden democratic socialism around here, or are there Democrats? These are not the Democrats of John F. Kennedy, are they?
No, they're
Absolutely
not.
not. But if you look at the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and whatever, they are calling out. See, they're doing what the initial Bolsheviks did in 1917, or pre-1917, when they were trying to get this stuff started politically, is to try and separate the wealthy from the poor. Oh, they're wealthy, they're bad. So that's the same thing they're doing here with Bernie Sanders. Oh, look at all these people. They got wealth. Well, look at him. He's got $700 million. Look at Elizabeth Warren and all her fraud.
Yeah.
They got millions and millions of dollars, but yet they're trying to separate, trying to pinpoint a wealth, the separation. The same thing. It's a communist move. Everything they're doing is all communism.
Well,
They're calling about color or religion or race or whatever it may be, or the fact that you're just an American, a heritage American, will say, you're bad. And that's the whole destabilization, the demoralization, and everything. Every trick in the book is what they're pulling on those stages. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's for sure. And let me say, the world that's being put forward in the pop culture and the way they're changing icons from one color to another. Because in the beginning, when Superman was a white guy, it wasn't because they wanted to show white guys that they're Superman. It was just that, the majority of people that had TV sets were white. That's all. Okay, but now all of a sudden you've got gender changes in characters and superheroes. Bobby doesn't know if he should be Susie or if he should be like Daddy. I mean, things have gotten so confused and so out of control that the level of noise is to the point where people have gotten, they're ready to blow. If you look around, it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal. I mean, I think we're looking at some serious information that's going to be coming out here in the near future, and I'm looking at any of these conventions and these events to be sitting duck points for the opposition to come in. Now, I've done quite a bit of work on the 60s and what happened, and this is very similar to things that have happened in the past. Now, I know you guys are familiar with something called the Chicago 8 trial, and there was a big hippie movement that basically blackmailed Chicago and said, if you don't do what we say, we're going to come down at your convention and cause a bunch of problems. Well, let me just say that hasn't gone away, and the same thing's going to happen with these Antifa groups. These Antifa groups over in Spain have been going hardcore against these conservatives. And Antifa in Europe is completely different than it is here. It's not the same thing. But there's quite a few people, if you look at what's been going on in Portland, you got George Soros and his paid operations. They're bussing people in, you guys. What do you think about that? I mean, do you guys think that we're looking at some trouble coming? Do you think there's a civil war coming? Is there another civil war?
Well, that's been planned.
There's no civil war. What it is basically these are foreign nationals, and even when they recruit heritage Americans to be on their team to fight for a cause that isn't their own, because they've all mind washed here, they're foreign nationals. This is no civil war. We got too many migrants here that are not legitimate American citizens. They're not heritage Americans.
Right.
So they're fighting for something that's drawn from their own country and going under a guise to where they're saying, hey, this could be your country and you could have what they're having if you just do this. This is when they're setting up the operation. And Antifa in this country is getting ramped up to be very dangerous, because Antifa in this nation, in the United States, has been working with terrorist organizations to get training. So they're not these just bike locks and cement milkshakes. They are now getting ready to pull some really serious stuff.
No, and they have been pulling some serious stuff, man. They cracked some old guy's skull with a tire iron up there in Oregon for no reason.
Let me correct this. The George Soros thing, it's actually the DNC. A lot of these busing you're seeing in is actually being funded by the DNC. So whatever you think is Soros, it's really the DNC.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty much synonymous, though, right? I mean, those guys, they're all the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's all just chaos.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, Soros, the Soros money, the Clinton Foundation, the DNC. I mean, what we see too is like, I just want to point out that the number one tactic that the Democratic National Convention and all those people associated, the whole list of characters that you named earlier, the thing that they do is they do a psychological maneuver which called projection. So what they do is they accuse Trump of whatever it is that they're guilty of, and then they all attack him for it. And then we
only got about 2 minutes.
Oh man, that's too bad. You know what? I really enjoyed being here with you guys. Man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Glad you. Sorry, I'm being distracted by lawn mowing going on outside. Anyway, right now. Jeez, terrible. Anyway, thanks, Jimmy and Brew.
Brew, thanks.
And I don't know, Deacon John should be back next week. I know we had a good chat here. A lot of good information. Thanks for picking up the ball, Jimmy. You did a great job.
Hey, thanks a lot. I really enjoy being part of the Revolution Radio family. And if anybody else appreciates it, you can drop on over to freedomslips.com and lay a few bones on us. If you don't have any of those, prayers, sharing the station, whatever you can do to help, we really appreciate it. And we just want to thank you so much. And thanks, you guys, for having me. And I really appreciate being here.
Yep. Thanks. This is LB. Catch my show on Tuesdays at 6 Eastern, rather.
All right, I'm done. Well, that was a good show. That seemed pretty good. What'd you think, Jason? How was it? Any good? You still there? I'm glad you're here. There was a bunch of people over there. Regular Girl was over in the chat over there. Bunch of people. Never got a chance to shout out the chat. Right on, cool. All right, well, hey, we'll be back tonight with our show. I'm going to do a retro on the earthquake because the anniversary happened yesterday for the San Francisco earthquake in '89, and I was here, so we're going to do a little piece on that, and then we got some other stuff we're going to get into, so it should be fun, man. All right, so I'm going to head out. I'll talk to you later. Have a great night, and I'll see you soon.